I wake up early all the time. It's no big deal. I'm not tired. And I know I don't have a regular time when I try to come on here because I don't like to regulate myself like that. It's just me. I don't feel an obligation to this medium or any other medium. And when a thought pops in my head and I have what I something to share, I'll do it, even if my hair is messy. Ooh, well, I thought I brought my coffee, but I didn't. But that's okay. I think it's still percolating anyway. And I already had my breakfast. The steel cut oats, by the way, normal serving, um, and orange juice and my multivitamin, and you know that'll do me for a little bit. As I focus not so much on the calories or anything like that, but more on the nutritional content. So I want to share a little story, and it's not going to be terribly long, but it sort of helps me understand things that have happened, are happening, and will probably always happen until they stop happening. Oh, completely. Um, and it has to do with a person's how some of us have a sort of a moral, ethical structure, and the stronger that moral and ethical structure is, and the more it has to confront the environment, um, how adjustments are made, or how sacrifices are made, and how morality and ethics are basically diluted based on the circumstances. Now, the most important thing to everyone is to live. We are alive. We come into this world, and we want to do everything that we can to stay alive. In some cases, there are some people who are actually more existentially defeated, and so they do opt for a slower death. Um, but nonetheless, that's the situation we have. So there was a time. Well, this is going back about 20 years. And I had basically got my foot in the door in the uh, financial industry, and I worked myself up the ladder. I didn't prepare in college for that. I don't know if I said this before, but when I went to college, I was the odd duck in the sense, and not the only one. I'm never gonna try to, think that I am the only one, and but the odd duck in the sense that I really wasn't interested in going to college to get myself educated for a specific career and get the horse blinders on, if you will. I just wanted to learn more things. I had a good base. I actually received the majority of my education in a sort of mix, a collective school. It turned into a collective. It was started by Canadian nuns, and it was a school that was really built from kindergarten, and I was part of the first graduating class. Every year that kindergarten class graduated was there was another room that was added to the school. So after that, there was first grade, second grade, and I joined. I got in sort of at the tail end of fourth grade, but fourth grade is a little bit misleading because the sort of the stages of education and how they're segregated, or how they're separated in Peru, just slightly different from the United States. The sort of what we refer to high school here, they call secondary education, and there are 5 years to secondary education, and there are 5 years of primary education, and then you have 2 years that are what's called kindergarten and transition. So you have kindergarten, transition, and first, second, third, fourth, fifth. and then first, second, fourth, fifth. I did think that the quality of the education that I received in Peru was at this school, at a small school. It wasn't a state school. I don't know what the education system was like in a state school. I can't speak to those facts. But I do know that there was uniformity and there was criteria. So a lot was for the state schools where there was a lot of the poor went. And I was poor, but just marginally, just slightly above. Um, the Everybody got the same sort of education in that respect, and there's a lot of demands as far as and it all had to do with making sure that you're prepared to be a professional. And of course, people would fall off the cliff and do other things in their life. Not everybody would go to college or anything like that. But I did during that high school in Peru. I went back to the States, so I did have 1 year at a high school in New Jersey, which was Delaware Regional Valley High School. And I liked it. I made some good friends there. I stayed in contact with a few people, but, lost contact since then. Uh, so I just went to college to get education, and then I was like a free spirit, and I was doing just whatever the fuck I want. I was a very, cocky. I was sort of rebellious, anti-establishment, but also not just. It wasn't just an anti thing. For me, it was also a process of doing, of creating a reality, and along with some other friends, we actually started what I think it's safe to say was sort of like that me and some other friends were part of a cultural vanguard in the musical vein, but not exclusive because it had to do with fashion and ideas and things like that. So it was really more of a cultural type of vanguard movement. Um, anyway, I did quite by accident. I might share that story another time. I got my foot in the door in the financial industry. I started working with a company that was then called Nations Bank, that now people know as Bank of America. And it did change names while I was working there. And at one point, uh, and one of the crazy things about business today and corporations, and I still see it, is that there's always movement. And I can easily say that the rug was pulled out from under me many times, or several times at least. I shouldn't exaggerate, several times. And so at one point in time, I was basically having to look for a job, but they were very cool about it because they actually did everything to prepare us. I mean, they knew they had to close shop, so they took all the employees and they gave us training and as far as how to do interviews and improving your resume and everything, basically to prepare us for the job market to try to get us, and kind of help us in our transition. And that was very nice, actually. And I had a choice. And at that time, I was married and I had um, one, no, two children. No, excuse me. I had one child at the time that I started that job. And then I had a second one while I was working the new job. Now, in the new job, though, I had a choice. There was this one guy, Howard, who really loved me. I don't know. He just, he was a cool guy. He was kind of funny. He worked for First Union, and he was actually trying to get me to go to Charlotte. My wife was working at a daycare center in a very ritzy part of Atlanta, and she's a very friendly, sweet person, and she really cares for the children that she looks after. And a lot of mothers appreciated that. And there was one mother in particular, and they befriended, and somehow the conversation came up between them that I was in the job market. And this lady happened to know this lady that worked at a company called at that time Robinson Humphrey, which was acquired by Smith Barney, which was acquired by Citigroup. And so I was eventually a Citigroup employee. Now, so what happened is I had a choice. I could try to, the choice I met was this broker, and this broker specialized in the type of business that I had been uh, developing myself, which was the 401k business. And I didn't know anything about 401ks when I stepped through the door. In fact, they offered me. I didn't even bother preparing. I just walked in the door, and once they gave me the job, but then they said, here are the books. Go ahead and read them for a while." And they closed me in a room, and they would bring me my lunch, and that's what I did. But so this lady was interested in me, and the way it worked at this company was that she was directly responsible for my pay. Directly responsible. She would, it wasn't human resources or anything like that. I mean, it was just a cut and dry relationship. If she didn't like me, I would be gone. Okay. And there was, and as I worked with her, um, she was, she didn't have an integrity, really. And the fact that she didn't have a lot of integrity bothered me. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I was I had the title of a technical analyst. In order to be a technical analyst, I had to get a Series 7 license that at that time was, I'm trying to remember, NASDO or something. It was the National Association of Security Dealers, NASD, something like that. And later turned into FINRA. And I never bothered to understand what that acronym stood for, but financial investment markets of some sorts and retirement, blah, 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 network. Um, so one of the things at that time, there was a lot of noise about controlling or having better mechanisms to preserve the integrity of the industry. And so there were a compliance department. And what the compliance did was really kind of oversee how the brokers communicated, among other things, how the brokers communicated with their clients and to make sure that they did things on the up and up. And as a technical analyst, my job was basically to call the performance numbers for our clients and create and basically do a quarterly performance report sheet. So, if they had certain investments, I would show the investments during certain time periods. What was the investment for the month? What was it for the quarter? What was for the year? What was it for 5 years? What was it for 10 years? And in the investment market, what you do in order to basically establish the effectiveness of the investment strategy of the manager is that you use a benchmark that is made up of like the stock like the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is really it's already turned into an index fund, and those are called passive investments, or passively managed. They're not really managed. They just mirror the composition of the index. But the indexes are supposed to they're just a hard line. And so managers would basically, their goal was to be better than the index. And so it was my job when I presented the information that I also have the index numbers run right below the actual performance numbers for the funds. Well, this lady had a problem in communicating, and she didn't know how to manage her clients, and she was, in many respects, she was cowardly. I mean, she didn't give that vibe off at all. But at the end of the day, if you can't be honest with your clients, that's what I would call that is cowardice. But what she would ask me to do would be, from quarter to quarter, she would, if the numbers were not good, because she was the person that was responsible for selecting that particular investment fund, she would ask me to change the benchmark, to find another benchmark, to see something that was better. And, anytime I produced any material, anything like I had to run upstairs and I get it signed off by compliance. The one guy was kind of funny because he was a big fan of the Three Stooges, and he had like Curly, Moe, and Larry pictures in his office and stuff like that. He was a kind of a strange character, not strange, but colorful, I guess you would say. He stood out. And I didn't at that time. I was very, like everybody else, just wear a white shirt and a tie and kind of going about and do my business. Um, but that situation where I had to constantly, not only was it a pain in the ass to just change the numbers because I had to go back and do all this shit that really there was, the only reason is because she was trying to deceive the client. Um, it was really creating a lot of internal conflict for me. And that it was the integrity, it was the morality, it was the ethics of these things. And if I bit my tongue, of course, I was sort of selling my soul, and I was selling my soul to be able to take care of my family. And basically, the situation just got unbearable. Unbearable. I mean, she had airs of sort of being this queen or something like that. She had her administrative assistant occasionally. She was generous at times, and said, "Oh, who wants Starbucks?" And she would grab the administrative assistant and says, "Hey, go down to the Starbucks on the bottom floor, and what do you want? A cappuccino?" And "I'll pay for everything." "Hey, you want a little snack with that?" So, but the conflict was really getting to me. And at the same time, I had a support group, not emotional support, but a technical support group. And this was another sort of sub company, and they helped me with the technical the tools that I needed in order to run the reports and help me understand how these things operated and blah 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 blah. Um, and so they were familiar with my dilemma. In fact, this lady was just renowned, and they knew her. They knew she was a difficult person, and everybody basically sucked up. Well, everybody bit their tongue. Everybody bit their tongue. They all knew there was something wrong, but everybody needed to take care of their own life. So nobody would really say anything. Everything was like the rumor mill, the gossip mill, over the sort of the sidebar conversations and the little kind of passive aggressive jokes about her and stuff like that. You know, very few. There was one guy that I worked with that actually he stood up to her and he was promoted, but he was still screwed over by her. But he was one guy that did sort of have the cojones to kind of deal with her in in no uncertain terms. Well, the one of the things that the responsibilities that I had, well, occasionally there would be conferences for the technical analysts, and I was sent off to a really nice resort out in Phoenix or Tucson, one of the two. Again, I can't remember which one. Large conference, with technical analysts from all over the country. Um, you know, Learning and hearing speakers and having like these fun team building events and all kinds of grab bags and what have you. um Drunken, a lot of drinking involved in this. But of course, at the same time I'm networking, and these people introduced me to some group, a team of brokers that were out of Winston-Salem. And basically some people started talking, and they got wind of me, or and I got in contact with them, and I kind of shared with them the things, and they flew me up to Winston Salem to for an interview. I saw Winston Salem. Actually, there was a part of it that was a little scary. I did see it as run down and sad and pathetic. Uh, but in this particular part of Winston-Salem was very nice. These guys were really cool, very friendly. Of course, that was on the surface. I wouldn't know, but according to everybody there, and not just there, but other consultants and stuff like that that would know them, they were pretty good. And quite honestly, I thought I was going to get the job. But here's what happened. The lady that I worked for, she was also sort of like a big wig in the sense of, she kind of established her reputation, and sort of they sort of considered her as a big player amongst the brokers because she specialized in the field of selling securities to businesses and basically offering them the 401ks. And but she would also be the consultant because there are different companies that sort of manage or provide certain types of investments or provide certain kinds of services. And so there's this consulting process where you try to find the best platform for that particular company, based on their particular needs, how many employees they have, blah, 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 blah. Well, she was the head of this group, like a council, the elders, and so were they. Well, she got wind, or basically they called her, and she knew I was looking for a job. And I said, I just can't. I can't remember. I kind of pussyfooted around the reason, if I remember correctly, because there was so much shit going on in my head. Of course, some of this stuff, and it's 20 years ago. But, I guess I was trying to tap dance a little bit on that. I didn't really wanna offend her, uh, but they called her, and she had a glass, partition so we could see in her office, and the only thing that was solid was the wooden door. But, whenever she wanted privacy, she would close the door, and we could see her talking on the phone. It so happens that they called her, and they asked her, um, what she thought about me. She badmouthed me, and they pulled the offer basically, and they never really made the offer. It really looked like they were going to, but she basically told them some. I don't know what the fuck she told them, but it's not. She didn't tell them some. I mean, there wasn't anything that I was doing bad. I had, glowing reviews from the analysts on the first floor, and a lot of people, understood how I approached my work, and the things that I did, and how I looked after, and how I related to different people, and what I did. But I ended up not getting the job, and that put me in just a really, 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 really difficult position where I just could not work with her anymore. But my livelihood depended on it. And there were other things on the of a personal nature that took place. One of them was that my mother and her husband, it was actually her third husband, but it was the happiest marriage that she was ever in. They were on a car trip to Indianapolis from Georgia, and maybe about 2 hours shy of arriving to the place that they were going. Um, they got off the wrong exit ramp because they wanted to stop to get something, and they realized it was the wrong exit ramp, and so they were just going to go, just cross the road and just go back onto the highway. And it was a hill, and there was a pickup truck that was speeding. Well, that was never established or anything like that, but they got T-boned, and Jim died on impact. Because it was a pickup truck and they were in a smaller car. So, he received a blow to the head. And my mom in the passenger seat, her arm was broken. And I got a call at work and I had to travel to see my mom in the hospital. Uh, anyway, um, so my mom, as a result of that, had moved to Florida. And then at that time, now by this time, I did have my second child, and he was born while I was working with this lady. So now I had two children, and I had purchased a condo that I actually bought from a friend of mine that I had worked with over at the Bank of America. And I moved closer to. I was living on the south side or the suburbs of Atlanta on the south end, just north of Stockbridge. But decided that's it. I was gonna sell it if I was gonna move to Winston-Salem anyway. I think we were already putting it in the market, and I just said that's it. But I had also been interviewing at the same time, and I can't remember if I thought I had the job, maybe, but I wasn't too sure. But I just couldn't stomach it, and I said, "That's it. My mom moved from Georgia. She had moved to Hallandale, Florida, and I said, I want my children to be able to see my mom more often. And so, I made the decision that we would go down there, and I kind of suffered from blowback from that as well. But we went down, and the job that I thought I had, I didn't get it. They called me up. It was down to 3 candidates, and I got flown into, White Plains in New York. It was an excellent interview, um, and I really thought I was gonna get the job, and I was shocked that I didn't. And they told me, who got it, and I had met him. He was a nice guy and everything like that. But I was lucky. And apparently, this guy did something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but uh, in a month's time, they fired him and they called me back and they said, "Would you, if we offered you the position now, would you accept it?" And I said, "Yeah." And so that was another stage of my life. But that's what I want to share, that story, because I do think that a lot of us, find ourselves in situations where, like in the Trump administration, people that worked for Mark Meadows or whoever, um, you know, they their livelihood is at stake, and so a lot of times people will bite the bullet, sacrifice their morals, sacrifice their ethics, because at that point in time, it's a survival thing. And it sounds kind of funny when you're talking survival when a person makes like $125,000 a year or 150,000. What the fuck do you need to survive for? But of course, if you start living in that income range, then you establish a pattern of expenses that kind of match that range. So it's hard to give those things up. And so, like for today, I would I have very little doubt that there are people that work for Marco Rubio, and I'm picking on him in particular because he is one of the senators from Florida, and he is up for reelection. And he has a staff. He has people that answer his phone. Marco Rubio, during the debates for the Republican nomination to pick the candidate that would run against Hillary Clinton. During that process, Marco Rubio, you can go back and find it. The things that he said, he got in this sparring match with Trump when they were, talking without saying it. They were trying to boast about who had the bigger dick. I mean, they really were, and that was like telling in and of itself, you know. But Marco Rubio's on the record of saying this guy's not qualified for office, blah blah, you know. So I mean, just knowing that Trump was not, qualified in any respect whatsoever. But once he won the nomination, I mean, Rubio just turned into a a sycophant, somebody who just supports Trump. He is not uh, he is not basically fulfilling his oath of office. I mean, he is actually he is basically I don't know why I'm at a loss for the word right now because I typically am not, but he is duty bound by his office, and there are certain expectations from leaders, or I shouldn't say leaders because that's a very misleading term, from people that occupy the office. There are certain responsibilities that are expected of those office, and he is basically neglecting those responsibilities. He's not even neglecting them, he's ignoring them. He doesn't care about them. And the reason he doesn't care is because of his livelihood. And he knows that Trump is a traitor, and Marco Rubio himself has employees, people that work under him that know how dirty it is, but they are willing to rationalize and dilute their morals and their ethics to preserve their livelihood. Um, that's a bad situation, and it's a situation that capitalism exploits. Because here they talk about the American dream and they highlight the individual, and that is the sickest thing about this culture. Okay, that the individual is sort of tantamount to it all, and really it's a bullshit story because none of us are individuals in a sense that we are born into a group. So to just say it is important to have your individuality, but to actually put yourself above it all, I think it's important to cooperate, but I don't think you should sacrifice everything. And that is the dilemma that everybody faces. Well, not everybody, because sadly, there's other things at play here, and it is social conditioning. People that are sort of still kind of existing on the animal plane. You know, the way I look at it is that we're born we are animals. We are animals. Anybody who says that we're not animals and that things this whole like notion that there is a hierarchy in the animal kingdom is kind of bullshit, because it's kind of grows out. It doesn't necessarily grow up. um, so we are animals, but we have the capacity to become human. And what it means to be human is to basically exercise actual logic, not rationalizations of emotions, because that's what animals do. And I don't want to cast aspersions because I don't want to assume animals don't think. I think that's a bad thing to do. There's a lot of talk. All the experiments with the chimps and the crows and there's a form of thought, a form of communication. And it's within that particular environment. They have their reality. We are the monsters of their reality. But again, there needs to be a balance between the individual and the social environment, the social group. But there is everything is out of balance, and that I'm going to close with that. And that was a very one movie that I saw was called Koya Niskatsi, which is a Native American Indian term, and it means life out of balance. And I saw that movie sometime in the 80s, maybe around 8 or 84. The good friend of mine, Chuck Sperry, fantastic artist. He does rock posters. If you never heard of him, look him up. Chuck Sperry. I met him at the University of Missouri. We did some things together. Um, but we went to the theater tripping, and we saw this. And Koyaanisqatsi is sort of a time lapse movie that accelerates and slows down. So there's no dialogue or anything like that. And I had no clue about what it was. I was sitting in the chair and I was seeing this thing and I was kind of waiting for the movie to start. And then I realized, oh shit, this is the movie. And I was tripping on top of it. So that was a but Koya Niskatsi means life out of balance. And that's where we are. And with that being said, I hope you have a great day and stay safe and be strong and be truthful to yourself. Find your truth. Take it easy.